Very good. Okay. So with that, I would like to call the August 31st, 2020 meeting of the Town of Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Miss August, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia,
Here.
Ms. Luckett,
Here.
Mr. Palladino,
Here.
Mr. Natale,
Here.
Mr. Stanton.
Here. Please note that tonight's meeting is being simulcast on YouTube and is also being recorded. I would like to present some housekeeping rules to ensure that this meeting goes smoothly. Please make all efforts to cut down on background noise or mute yourself, including cell phones and pagers. Please allow ample time for everyone to finish speaking. And if you would, please announce your name prior to speaking to assist with following the flow of conversation. As I always forget, I forgot to announce myself. My name is Chuck Stanton. I'm chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. With that, if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
The
of the United
flag
States,
of the United States of America,
which stands one nation
under God,
to the republic.
with liberty and justice for all. Has everyone read the minutes of the August 3rd, 2020 meeting?
Yes. Gary Natale, yes.
Are there any corrections? Okay. Ms. Luckett, I know you're muted.
No, I have no questions
Oh, okay, very good.
or corrections.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Gary Palladino to approve the minutes from the August 3rd, 2020 ZBA meeting.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. August, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Cicero Town Board acknowledges the importance of full public participation at all public meetings, and therefore we urge all who wish to address those in attendance, please announce themselves and address themselves through this Zoom meeting. At this time, I will make a motion that all actions taken tonight are type 2 actions and have a negative impact, that is no impact on the environment unless otherwise indicated. Do I have a second?
It's Mark. I'll second it.
Very good. Please call the roll, Miss August.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. I'll briefly review the process for tonight's meeting for the benefit of those present, as this process has been modified in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. First, the applicant will have an opportunity to describe their project. Second, the board will then ask questions about the project. Third, I will then open a public hearing where any comments collected as prescribed in the meeting notice are read aloud and into the record. Fourth, board members will then follow up on any questions posed in the public hearing, and the applicant will then be given the opportunity to respond to these public input questions and provide additional information. Fifth, after the public hearing is closed, the board members will again have the opportunity to question the applicant. Sixth, the board will openly discuss amongst ourselves the 5 factors that contribute to the final decision. Please note that this board does not have a pre-agenda meeting, so there is no prior discussion of cases outside of this meeting. And 7, finally, a motion will be made either approving or denying the requested variance, seconded and voted upon. Before we bring up Mr. Burns, I do want to note that thanks to Mr. Burns setting this up for us, I believe everybody had the opportunity to make a field visit to the property. while Mr. Burns was present so that they could see the proposed layout of the house. Is that correct?
Yes, Gary Natale.
Very good. So with that, Mr. Burns, could you please just give us a synopsis of where we are right now?
Yes, my name is Rob Burns, and tonight I've got Tim Coyer, who was the surveyor on the project, to represent me also. But I would just like to add that in speaking with the different folks out at my mother's camp, it was talked about that if we could move it to 12.5 feet. So Tim's, I don't know how much Tim's up to speed on, but I would like the request to be also 12.5 feet to be considered.
Thank you, Rob. I was not aware of the 12.5 feet. That's why right now our maps do say 15 feet. We did slide the house back 5 feet from the original 10 feet. That was on our previous application per the board's concerns and comments of the last meeting. We also slid the house a little bit to the north, specifically to avoid a large tree that's in the middle of the lot, so that we won't be taking that tree out specifically. I wasn't there here at the last meeting. I know that there was some concern about the 10-foot setback, and there was concern about wanting to push it back. So we did listen. I talked to Mr. Burns, and he was willing to push it back some now. Like I said, I was not aware of the 12.5 feet that was possibly discussed when out at the property. I'm open to talk about that. And I was also wondering, has anybody gone through the 5 factors? Did Mr. Burns go through that at all last time? No.
We did not get to the point where we addressed the 5 factors. We figured a site visit was, since there was so much discussion about this, that a site visit was more in line with where we needed to go before we started talking about a decision.
Okay.
So I know everybody's been out on site. What I did want to share 2 photos that I feel are relevant. So hopefully, can everyone see this photo?
Yes.
Okay. So this is standing on the seawall looking back. And what I did was, if everybody can see the orange wheel in the background with the rod sticking up, this was actually my attempt at measuring off 30 feet from the seawall. So 30 feet is our minimum backyard. That is what part of what the discussion was during the last meeting, is actually moving that house back to 30 feet. So I thought a good reference point for everybody would be in order. So this is the White House in the background. Directly behind the wheel is the residence that is claimed would lose a lot of view shed if the proposed house is moved back. Then let's, of course, now I won't be able to get to the other one that I want to get to, but here we go. So then this is a shot from the corner of the porch of that house. So right at the corner of the deck, looking out, it's my wheel again in the same spot that establishing that 30-foot backyard. So this would actually be the corner of the new structure. So anything to the right of this would be obscured. Anything to the left would still be open, and that does not allow, or that does not take into account any future patio behind the house. So I thought these might be relevant for the discussion.
Hey Chuck, it's Mark. Did you do the reverse math? How far off the road boundary is that dimension if the corner back of the house was to be there?
I think we would roughly split it. It was almost an even third by third split if you put the house back at the 30 feet. So you have almost a 30 if not a little bit more than a 30-foot front yard if you do that.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So with that, I wanted to get any observations from the board, any additional questions?
A couple things, maybe for Mr. Burns, and I don't know that, did I see in the paper that the house that we've been talking about next door to you, did that sell? I think it's Norbert's house. Norby's.
Yes, the Norb sold it to his son.
Okay.
His son's living with him. It was a family type sale.
Gotcha.
It wasn't an arm's length transaction.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I saw the address pop up, and in the last month or so since we've talked. For the rest of the board, my comments are this. When we went out and looked at it, I think that 15-foot number that we talked about, to me, is acceptable. I think it lines up with some of the other homes in the area, and I don't think pushing it back obstructs the view at all. I think, Chuck, your radical example, pretty much shows that even moving it back further wouldn't obstruct the view. But I think, from my personal opinion, the 15-foot setback is something that I would certainly support.
Okay. I did
This is
post-
Gary. I would also.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Natale.
Yeah, I would also support that.
I would as well, Chuck.
Okay.
This is Gary Palladino. Yeah, I thought about this a lot because I know we had some conversation in the beginning or the last meeting. And I do realize that it's kind of our task to minimize, if we approve a variance, to minimize that variance. And thinking about pushing that house, the new house, back farther, I had a problem with that, in as much that the owners of the house now have been there for probably, I think it was over 50 years. And they've experienced severe winters, mild winters. So conditions on road snow removal and conditions of ice coming up from the lake, as Mr. Burns had said, will come up and approach the house, actually plates of ice. So I guess my thought was, and this is, they're going to spend a lot of money tearing the house down and building a brand new house. So I honestly think that if this house being back 15 feet and the other house, the original house was 7 or 8 foot off the road, to go back farther is good and not to endanger the house from the ice. So, I mean, basically what I'm saying is that I think their decision where to put the house, they probably had a lot of thought put into that and made it where it would please the town, minimize the variance, and still protect the house from snow removal and ice coming up from the back. So, 15 foot is, I guess it was a long way of saying, yeah, I agree with the 15 foot.
Thank you for that, Mr. Palladino. I did want to note also, just for the record, that there is no driveway to this structure, so that 15 foot is yard. So there's no considerations about vehicles here. And just for my personal opinion, when I went out there, you can always look at lines on a map, but when you get out there, you get a real good feel for the space. And this really didn't feel as big as it looks on the map here. So I'm in, I guess I'm in the same mode as everyone else on the board right now. With that, I just wanted to ask Steve Procopio, have there been any comments, public comments at all received?
No, we have not received any.
Okay. I know we did this before, but I'm gonna open and close the public hearing here, seeing as there's no comments. I would like to have a little bit more discussion between the board and our applicant, as there was a counter proposal for 12 and a half feet. It seems like the board is leaning all towards 15 feet. So, Mr. Burns, how are you feeling about the way the board is leaning right now?
Well, obviously, I appreciate them, understanding the 15 feet, and the reason for the 12 and a half feet is obvious once you've been out there. It just, it's going to open up 90 more square feet of front lawn versus back lawn. The other factor again is we don't have a parking lot there. I mean, there's no driveway ever going to go there. We have the two lots across the street that we park our cars in, and it further keeps us from the trees. So, I mean, the 12 and a half feet was what we thought of as I was speaking with some of the members. And the 12 and a half feet obviously gives you 2.5 more feet of lakefront. And as just been said, the lots, and this is a double lot, but these lots are out there aren't that big to, the farther you get away from the water within reason, I guess what I'm trying to say is better. And the fact that we're not putting a driveway in the back, we're going to be just moving back and protecting Norb's view. And you said during the public comments, I didn't speak because Norb wasn't here to speak for himself, but I can tell you Norb's asked me, he's an older gentleman. Of course, now Norb's asked me pretty much every 4 days, when's the meeting and when am I going to find out where the house is going to be? So Norb Brefka is obviously concerned about this house going up further. He's an 85-year-old guy that didn't take any public action as far as contacting you, but I think he spoke with some of you folks when you were out there. So Norb's obviously concerned, and part of what I want to do is appease my neighbor, but more importantly, if it's 12 and a half feet, that's 2.5 more feet of front lawn. Down the road, if my sister decides she wants to try and get a variance to build a deck, it's just 2.5 more feet that she could have reason to want to have a deck built. I mean, I'm not gonna approach you about building a deck because I'm in the stamped concrete business and I could stamp a patio there and be done with it. So if my family members decide they want to build a deck, that's going to be up to them. And then they're going to come to you, but on their behalf, if they had an extra 2.5 feet to work with, that wouldn't hurt them. And to what Mr. Palladino said, every foot's critical out there in regards to the ice coming off the lake. I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with Beach Road in the winter, but the winter gets nasty. And then if you get an east wind, the east wind is what pummels our bay. And if you get an east wind when the ice breaks up, just as Mr. Palladino said, it comes off in sheets and it stacks. So the farther back you are within reason, the better you are. And then again, the factor of the tree. So if you get a little bit farther from the tree, it can't hurt you. So as I say, I mean, my mother would like the 12 and a half feet also. That's the main reason I'm asking for it, is I want to please my mother. God bless her.
Understood.
Helen's in a nursing home, by the way. She broke her other hip the day after this.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that.
She took a header.
You told her to sit down.
I do all the time.
I told her to sit down.
How many more times could I tell her? So that's if Tim can speak to it from a surveying standpoint, I'd appreciate that also.
A surveying standpoint, as far as I'm concerned, at 2.5 feet, moving it closer, I don't think it has any effect as far as the houses in the front. The way I look at it personally is all the houses along Beach Road, specifically to the north and to the south, are actually closer to the road boundary than 12 and a half feet. They're actually like roughly 10 feet. That's why we kind of started at 10 feet when we first asked for this variance. I didn't just blindly put 10 feet on there. We looked at the houses that are across the street and up and down the road and came up with kind of an average. It was about 10 feet, and that's what we were kind of going for. So as far as a physical standpoint from Beach Road, I don't think 12 and a half feet is outrageously close. But that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Before
I
you,
think one easy solution would be to go back to the architect and get a footprint that's turned, like I think Mark Rabia mentioned that last week. They probably have a different footprint that you could just turn on the, make it 32 feet across the front and 28 feet deep, and then that's going to give you your backyard.
Yeah, but that would have changed the whole design of the camp. I mean, we're into the, that's just adding more soft costs.
They probably have another design in stock that you could use.
one thing I did want to note, because we do have a decision from the Onondaga County Planning Board. I made mention of this at the last meeting. They've said they have no concerns about this project, and we can act on our own on this. So there's been a counter proposal for 12 and a half feet put before the board. I would be comfortable with anyone for further discussion on this, or anyone taking this on for discussing the 5 factors.
Can we talk, are we looking at 15 feet or 12 and a half feet?
Well, that's right now, the board is leaning towards 15. The applicant has requested 12 and a half as a halfway measure.
I guess, yeah, thinking about it right now is the 12 and a half versus the 15, it's 2.5 feet, as everybody has said. Why is it important for us to have 15 and not the 12 and a half? I mean, I know it's a larger variance. And as I said earlier, I know what we want to do is minimize the variance, but I guess to make someone, I mean, it's 2.5 feet. I don't see the house to the right and the houses to the left, and all basically in that whole area are relatively either new or remodeled or nice houses. I don't see anyone doing major construction in the very near future that we could ask his neighbors to go back farther towards the lake and get an increased road frontage. So for him to go back an extra 2.5 feet for, I guess my question is, for what reason? When he's still going to be back farther than his neighbors to the left, which would be the north, and he obviously to the south, he's not. But I don't know. I'm throwing it up there. I just thought about it for a second, and
I think Gary, it's more the thinking was the houses to the north are, 50 years old or whatever, however old they are. The houses to the south are, 10 and probably 20 years old. 8938 is, about 15 feet off the road. And that's kind of what the model was, right? Is to get that 15 that way. I know Mr. Burns said they never pull a car in, but if you ever pull a car in, you want to make sure you can nose it in and not hang out into the road if it ever comes.
But that's kind of,
that was the thinking.
But yeah, I followed that, Mark, originally during the first meeting, but when I went down and looked, I mean, I think the houses to the north, which is the left as you're looking at the lake, I think we just approved his immediate neighbor, a year or two ago, to put the front part on. I don't really see, in the house next to that, it looks relatively either remodeled, either re-sided or something. I guess what I'm saying is I don't really see anybody doing anything maybe within 20 years. And is it, well,
I want to make sure I'm following your point though. What do you mean by that? Right. I mean, if you go to the right of what we're looking at in the plan, those houses are relatively new, and there's, what I would consider maybe appropriate amount of setback. The houses to the left or to the north are older and maybe not necessarily where we would site them today if they were to come to us.
didn't we just approve last year or the year before the house to the immediate left of him for a a driveway, or not a driveway for, yeah, for a car to be put up there? Is that the house? But I think it is, but if it isn't, I think we just did a year or two ago, we did something on that. And if we did, but the houses there still, they don't look run down like they're gonna be needing any construction or anything major in the near future, but that's just my opinion. I just threw it out there right now. So, yeah, up for discussion, obviously, guys.
How's the rest of the board feel about this?
Well, let's ask Steve. Steve, how many homes are 12 and a half feet off the pavement?
Mr. Natalia, are you asking me on Beach Road? I couldn't really, I
Yes,
couldn't
on-
estimate
on
how
the
many.
beach.
Well, I mean, a lot of the homes are closer to the road than is required by the current zoning regulation, but I couldn't tell you how many they are.
Well, I can't remember anything being that close in a long time on anything we've done. And remember what Gary Palladino just said, we have to minimize the variance. So, I was there like all of you, has nothing to do with infringing on the neighbor's sight line. When I stood at 15 feet, and it might even have been 20, it was right in the middle of the table that they were sitting at. So they had no trouble seeing, maybe 180 to 220 degrees. So, I'm sticking with 15 feet. I think that's being reasonable. And I'd like to see us do an up and down vote on it. And if the board feels 12 and a half feet, then that's what he gets. That's what our purpose is. And, we've given and he has to give a little, and I'm firm on 15 feet.
And Garrett, it's Mark, just a point of clarification, it's 15 feet from the road boundary, not necessarily the edge of pavement. I think edge of pavement,
Okay.
at least on average, looks to be 6 to 7 feet across the frontage of the property. So technically from edge of pavement, you're looking at 21 to 22 feet, I think, which is, a decent amount to nose a car in if you had to.
Yep.
That's my estimation of that dimension also.
Thank you. Stand corrected.
Yeah, the pavement's roughly 7 feet off the road boundary.
Okay, so with that, would someone like to discuss the 5 factors? In anticipation of making a motion.
Would you like me to go through them? Or are you talking to the board?
I can go through them.
Okay.
Just gotta find my notes. All right, the 5 factors. The first one being, will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood, or will the granting of an area variance create a detriment to nearby properties? Now, I answered no. I said just the opposite. An old structure is being removed and a new house is being constructed. In addition, the new house is farther back off the road than the old house. And I feel it's adding to the value of the neighborhood, not taking away.
Chuck
I
Stanley.
agree.
Agree.
Gary agrees.
I agree.
Yeah, Mark agrees.
Can I just ask something? Are we talking about 12 and a half, or are we making these on 15?
I don't know what we're talking about.
Well, I think it's
We're
important.
going over the 5, no, we're going, well, no, it really is relevant at this point. We're going over the 5 factors to see whether or not, in my opinion, whether or not this is even going to, I don't know, Chuck, what the heck, what do you think?
I think we've heard from 3 of our members that they would prefer the 15 feet.
So we're answering these questions based on 15 feet. Correct?
That would be my inclination based on the way the board has commented so far.
So Chuck, you're for 15 too as well, so whatever. Okay,
Well, let me interject. Why don't we ask the applicant what he wants you to present?
good idea, Tara.
Thank you, Mr. Kerwin.
Well, at this point, as I said, I would like you to consider the 12 and a half feet. And I have a survey that shows at some point that the existing camp was 6.5 feet from the road line, and we moved it up by, another 5 feet or whatever. So we're getting, farther off the road. But the concept of, it keeps going back. I keep hearing this so that you could nudge a car in. Lot 9, if you're looking at the survey, is next to it, and the door to go in the camp is going to be on that side facing Donnie Comp, facing 8940. So if you were ever going to drive a car in this lot, you have a 100-foot deep lot to drive a car, and you're never going to drive a car directly behind the camp. That wouldn't even be, if you were going to go behind the camp, you'd go broadside, and the car is 9 feet wide. If you were going to pull the car in nose first, you'd pull the car in on lot 9, which is the lot to the right of where the building is going to be. The building is going to be generally most of the buildings on lot 10. So in regards to I just keep repeating myself, but in regards to pulling a car in, that isn't even open. There's nothing to discuss. I mean, we've been there for 55 years. We've never pulled a car in there, so we never will. We've had 3 elderly people deceased that were there that came in wheelchairs, and we drove the car in on lot 9 and brought them up to the tree and got them out in wheelchairs. So that's the car issue as far as that goes.
Chuck, I think you have to explain to Mr. Burns that if we vote no on 12 and a half, then he's back at 30.
Right.
Good point, Terry.
Yes.
Exactly. Good point. That's
For
the requirement. So we're giving them, we're actually trying to help this gentleman.
Oh, no, and I appreciate it. I understand, Yar.
So the question, Rob, in the end is, can you live with 15 if they vote on this tonight? Because if they vote on 12 and a half, it does not sound like it's going to get approved, and you would lose 15 for sure if they vote no on 12 and a half. If they vote tonight on 15, you would get 15. You
Right.
could live with that.
Then that's what we're going to have to live with. That's fine. I mean, it is what it is. If that's what they want to do. It's,
Okay. So Mr. Palladino, I would use that to inform your discussion.
Okay, very good.
The factors are being applied to 15 feet.
Correct.
That is correct.
You're up, Gary.
We covered the first factor, and I'll go to the second one. And that is, can the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance? No. Not at this point in time. And I think after the conversations that we've just had, that the 15-foot off the road boundary seems to be the best spot to locate the house without causing damage or any problems.
So this is Chuck Stanton. I'm going to weigh in and say that I agree with that statement, and I would just like to amend that our applicant has gone above and beyond trying to accommodate our concerns, considering we started out at 30 feet.
The rest of the board?
Yeah, it's Mark, I concur with Chuck's comments relative to the cooperation of the applicant. However, I do think there's a way to fit this onto the property without the use of an area variance. Right? I think we've proven that. Right now, it's just a matter of trying to work with the applicant and work with his wishes. But I think the truest spirit of the interpretation is I think we could probably get the house on. Now, it wouldn't necessarily meet his goals, but so I guess I'm guess I'm technically no. That doesn't really matter, but technically no.
I agree. No, Gary, Natalie,
Ms. Luckett,
I'm gonna say no. His goal is to have as large a backyard as possible to protect the house from snow, and 15 works for that.
Factor number 3, is the requested variance substantial? Yes, it is. It's the front yard setback is 50% of the required setback, so 50% is substantial.
I agree. Gary, Natalie,
Chuck Stanton agrees.
Terry Luckett agree.
And Mark agrees.
Okay, factor 4. Will the variance have an adverse effect on the nearby physical or environmental conditions or environmental? I answered that as no, I don't believe so. I feel that with the construction of a new house, for one thing, the planning board will see that the proper drainage will be maintained or developed on the final grade. So this was an easy one in my book as to no.
Gary,
Right.
Natalie agrees.
Terry Luckett agree.
I agree as well. It's Mark.
And Chuck Stanton also agrees.
And then of course 5, was the alleged difficulty self-created? That's a yes. But however, that does not in itself include the granting of these variances.
Gary, Natalie agrees.
Terry Luckett agrees.
And Mark agrees.
And Chuck Stanton agrees.
With the 5 factors being discussed, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Robert Burns to approve the area variance request for the property located at 8946 Beach Road, Cicero, New York. And the requested variance is for a front yard setback of 15 feet where 30 feet is required. Do I have a second?
Second motion, Gary, Natalie,
Ms. August, please call the roll when you're ready.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale,
yes to the motion.
Stanton,
Yes to the motion. Motion passes. Mr. Burns, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. So with that, is there any other business before the board tonight? Okay, with no other business being heard, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn. It's Mark.
And
Second by Gary.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we'll see everybody back here next month.
See you next
See ya.
time.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.